Mike Simpson. We farm just out of Rangiriri, which is just north of Huntly. We milk 1250 cows through 2 herringbone sheds. I moved home 8 years ago and contract milked for 6 years, and then the last 2 seasons I've stepped aside and attempted to take over some of my dad's roles. We had a thought about what we wanted to do, and we wanted to make things a bit easier for ourselves. We were about 2 weeks off having it all up and running, so it's quite exciting. Our boundary is the Waikato River, and the other boundary is the Whangapei stream outlet. So we are very low lying. We're at the bottom of the table for all the drainage schemes, which is good in summer because we retain a lot of moisture, but through the winter we can have a lot of surface water. Paddocks that you can't even drive a two-wheeler through, ride a two-wheeler through, yet alone feed out in. So the challenge of us over winter is we're pretty much grass-based for 2 months because we just can't physically feed anything. The damage we did from July to August, we paid the price for that pugging. It grew willow weed, outgrew the grass, and so July, August, September we'd do the damage. We couldn't renew that grass until March, and then the cows couldn't really eat it until July. So best part of 10 months that paddock's probably producing 50% of the grass that it should be, and it's not good for the environment back then. Calving this season was one of our better ones. We had a dry winter, but we still had to use sacrifice paddocks, cows standing in mud all night, having to draft new mums out of that mob in the paddock at times. It was just a stressful job. It probably took an hour and a half for 4 people every day, and it was a lot of work. This year we'll have our springer mob on the feed pad, so we'll literally be able to punch their numbers into the minder, and the gate will draft them out while we're having breakfast. And checking cows, our contract milker can just come down. They're all in here. If he has to calve one, it's a 50-metre walk to the head crush, and the management and ease of that is going to be 100 times easier than what it has been. We used to store silage just on grass in secured paddocks. Sometimes we'd be chugging a 4-wheel drive to get to the face of the stack, and then having to get towed out. So the challenges of that we won't ever have again. Feeding out, we had to take a feed out wagon around the whole farm, which could be 2 k's one way at sometimes. So the ease of what we've got now is we're feeding out probably 50 metres, and eventually it'll be concrete that we drive on, but it's going to take all the stress out of that. Getting wagons into paddocks, sometimes they're a bit tight, training staff, health and safety of uncoupling the wagon in the mud. We went and had a look at about 8 different systems, and all the different ranges of roofs and bedding, matting, slats. A lot of them were, the feed pad was shared amongst the cows, so it would be a 900 cow farm and it's a 300 cow feed pad, where our whole driver was to be able to get them off the land for the 6 weeks that they're dry at night and sleep them all at once. So we went to, it's about a 1,000 cow feed pad. There's 3 feed pads in amongst the one under the roof, and they can comfortably sleep with the 6 square metres a cow for that dry period. And it'll just save our pasture, it'll save the stress of worrying about it when you get 20 mils of rain overnight, and you know where the cows are in the morning type thing. So our current system is 2 44-a-side herringbones. Our contract milker employs 6 full-time staff, and we need 4 minimum every single day to milk. With this new system we're going to have 4 full-time staff, and we can get by with just 2 milking at a push. We can probably get by with 1. So the ease of that, we can have a better roster for staff, less hours a day worked, less milking times each day. We actually make a desirable job for the dairy industry, where before staff came and went because they were just in the shed for so long. We don't expect them to do too much outside of the shed, just feed the cows and milk them, but it still came at a cost of milking for 7 or 8 hours a day every day. And the new system, one guy will be milking in the shed, one will be floating around at the yardsman, one will be on holiday, and one can be outside doing farm duties. So with the effluent side of things, we went with the weeping wall. We looked at a range of options, and it seemed to be obviously the best one. We could retain our existing pond. We got that drop tested, and that didn't that passed. So the weeping wall, contains all the solids and only the liquid going to the pond. What we had to do over winter was get that right down and just divert all the cow sheds when they weren't being milked, and spread, and you needed a few good days of fine weather before you're even able to spread it on the paddocks. So it became a challenge at times. But this new system with the roofing, we shouldn't really create too much effluent, and it will definitely be manageable over the winter period. What we had to do in the past was have bigger nozzles on our irrigator, and we couldn't go on the inner axles because it's moving too slow and it was applied too heavy. So just due to having to pass through solids, what we can do now is put smaller nozzle caps on them, put on less application, and it should be a higher strength because it's the same, it's getting recycled. So area now is opened up to the entire farm. We talked to contractors, and we can actually truck the dry solids to a point and then use a muck spreader from there. So the cost of carting it with the muck spreader would be very high, but talking to contractors, they're comfortable that we can actually cart it anywhere on the farm with trucks and then spread it from that point. So we've opened up the effluent area to our entire farm now, which is quite cool. Yeah, so it's a cheap fertiliser really. We're just paying cartage and spreading, so it should reduce our fertiliser costs, and we should be able to maintain a low nitrogen usage really. We used to have in-shed meal feeding systems that couldn't feed straight palm kernel. We could have a 60% blend, but now we can actually mix them how we want it, so the ratio we can decide on the day or the week, and make our own blends up really. We've gone away from the whole driver was to feed a lower cost meal on the feed pad, so we can actually feed 3 times as much feed on the feed pad as the in-shed meal feeding system. So we're going to be able to really fully feed our cows all year round. We've got 3 flood wash chambers on the feed pad and 1 on the cow shed. We had to put an electrical box in so that they couldn't all flood wash at once. And we'll be able to recycle the same water. The water goes to the weeping wall and then back to the pond, and then the pond pumps it to the tanks, so that it's improving the entire effluent product itself, not just recycling the same water over and over. We can flood wash up to 6 times a day really, if we wish.